What's going on? Welcome back to the Look Mum, I'm Hustling podcast, the number one entertainment hustle-related podcast show in the nation, in Australia.
I love that. Can we
We've
keep
claimed
saying
it.
that? Yeah, definitely. It's like the
It's
Logan Paul.
a bit long-winded though.
I don't think so. It's like the Logan Paul one, right? Where he just kept saying they're like the number one podcast in America or something like that. And then he just,
Yeah.
he says it like at the beginning of everyone, even though he's not. And he's like, yeah, I'm
I was
just
going
going
to
with
say,
it.
I don't think he ever became number one. Like, it's kind of hard to surpass Joe Rogan. He's up there though in the sort of the bro world.
Yeah, it's the whole affirmation thing, right? Like we will be number one.
Right. Who's
Yeah.
your number one podcast? Let's eliminate the obvious ones.
It honestly, it just depends like what mood I'm in. Like I've got a few that I cycle through. So I've got like Ryan Holiday, which I talked about before, like he's into the Huberman podcast, even though a lot of the science stuff just goes over my head.
Because I remember one of our very early episodes was why we started the Look Mum show.
Yeah.
It's a cool name as well, Look Mum show.
Mm-hmm.
No mums involved yet, so we'll get around to it. I was thinking actually we should get our parents on, our mums on in particular one day.
Far out.
Maybe just you and the mums, or we can be both of us. And
Yeah.
that's going to be probably our most viewed, I reckon. But we did do an initial early episode about our favorite podcast at the time, and I think it's changed quite a bit since then.
Yeah, it
like
has.
based on what you just said, anyway.
No, for sure. And I remember like when I first got into listening to podcasts, like I had no idea what it was. And you were like, have you heard of this thing called podcast? And I'm like, what's podcasting? And then that's when
Way back when.
so like Serial was heaps popular and stuff like that. But I think Serial actually made.
There should probably is a new serial out now. Sorry to cut you off. Now that Adnan was released from jail the other
Oh,
month.
right. Yeah. And I think that was a big like driving force for him being able to get out and stuff, right?
Yeah, everyone was just in the Reddit forums trying to figure out all the little details of the crimes.
Yeah.
So interesting. So yeah, I think if you guys want to see the mums on the pod, I don't know how keen that'd be, or if they understand what it is.
Drop us a comment.
But it's funny you said that you didn't know what a podcast was, right? And I did deep dive on my old Facebook account the other day and found the first podcast I started with some friends back in Wollongong, 2015. I tried. And then I did a couple since then. We did the Bold Encounters Star Trek one. Didn't
That's
go very
right.
far.
Literally sitting on our bed with like two handheld microphones and watching Star Trek on my old iMac desktop.
Yeah, maybe we should bring that back. I've got the episode somewhere on a hard drive. Anyway, enough about that. We're kind of on like a bit of a movie sci-fi theme today. As you can see, we're wearing our Avatar shirts. So
Yes.
2009 Avatar shirts from the initial movie. We're big fans. These were actually in our eBay store. I was thinking about, should we start doing like an ad read for our eBay store
Oh my
mid-show?
God. Should our eBay store like sponsor the episode a bit like Rick Glassman, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's like another comedian podcaster, but he uses his dad's furniture store.
Rug store.
Rug store, that's right. And puts ads and stuff in the middle of his episode and everything.
Yeah,
So
we won't do the clicks. We're not going to rip him off that far, but maybe we can just sell.
let's do like an audio ad, like what's the like the Winston with a Y, like those
Right.
kind of like radio sort of style
really
ads.
annoying voice.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we'll get into all the Avatar news because we did see it first thing yesterday morning on release day, which was interesting.
We did.
We have a few extra, I guess it's kind of a science theme today, science movie theme. So got some interesting stuff to talk about in science news in particular. Some groundbreaking news.
Huge breakthrough in science,
Yeah,
right?
there's been a huge breakthrough with physicists. Oh man, my P's and my C's not great today. Physicists achieving a holy grail of nuclear fusion energy. So there's a groundbreaking discovery. They've figured out a way to essentially make more energy compared to nuclear fission energy, which is, well, we'll get into it a bit later, but they take a large, heavy element or atom. I'm really failing on my
You're the
science
science guy,
degree.
yeah.
And they split it into two smaller components,
Yeah.
and then you get release energy out of there. But they figured out a way to do it the other way, where you have two lighter elements, in this case hydrogen, and you can create energy from two components that are lighter in weight and mass, essentially. So you get more clean energy available.
Yeah, 100%. And just to sort of like slim it down for people like me,
Yeah,
so this is
and Becky as well.
the first time they got more energy out than energy in.
Energy in.
Yeah.
Well, we can get into that as well. US lawmakers introduced bills to ban TikTok. We've heard this before. I think Donald Trump tried canceling TikTok at one point. Citing the risk of China spying on Americans. That's from Variety magazine. And there's also a new report we've seen this morning showing the algorithm. There's some data that shows the algorithm pushes self-harm and negative self-image stuff around diet and like self-harm, suicidal kind of things to young teens and stuff via the algorithm. So it's interesting where TikTok's at the moment. A lot of people are trying to get it banned, and then there's a lot of data coming out showing why
supporting that.
supporting the argument of why it's not the best platform. And is the content on there being skewed and trying to represent Americans and the US in a negative light, or trying to, I guess, create more like mental health problems potentially, as opposed to like showing the more enlightening positive stuff. So that's really interesting. We're getting into the James Cameron, is his name right?
Yeah, it is James Cameron. Yeah.
Avatar sequel, Way of Water, expected to make a splash with 525 million global opening this weekend, but it needs 2 billion to break even.
Wow, 2 billion?
Yeah.
That's a
lot. I don't know if it costs 2 billion to make, but including all of the marketing is the huge part, right?
Like I heard that marketing is like 25 to 50% of like the money like invested in movies. And
I haven't seen that much marketing for it yet.
No.
I haven't seen any toys. I haven't been in Kmart or anything like that. Because it's Christmas time, It is a bit mental, but I haven't seen any toys or
Actually,
merchandise.
I do work with a dad. I was like talking about it. He's like, oh yeah, I've seen the toys around. So
Right.
they do have toys and stuff.
Interesting. So we'll get into the Avatar news. We've got our merch on in support of the Cameron. What's his nickname? Cameron Meister?
Sure, why not?
Cam Meister?
Cam Meister, yeah. And if you want to see our shirts that we're wearing, just pop on over to the YouTube, or Spotify has got the video version as well.
And on the content theme, media and entertainment giant Warner Brothers Discovery taking up a $1 billion more in tax write-offs from cancelled content. So they've sort of done a merger recently. They've incorporated a bunch of different entities like DC and HBO and all that sort of stuff. And they've got to slim down on the top line, cut some content out, and they're going to be like $5.3 billion of written off off the top line.
Will this be DC's time to shine? Are they finally going to get it right? Are they finally going to be up there like Marvel is?
Is Marvel still up there? What was their latest release? Black Panther just came out, right?
Yes, yeah. Wakanda one is like, I think it's a huge one as well. But just think about the correlation, like Marvel with their TV shows, movies, and all that kind of stuff. They're 100% making more of a profit than DC is. So. And we'll get into a little bit later as well, but there's one of those things, like when the Avengers first came out, everyone's like, who the hell are the Avengers? Like, what about the Justice League? I know everybody knows who the Justice League is, but now, like, it's more about the Avengers than the Justice League, where it used to be the other way around, especially in the comic book series.
Super interesting stuff. And that's what I was thinking about Avatar. Like, they got to make huge numbers, right? What's their competition? Because there's always the Christmas rush, the holiday season releases. I haven't had a Star Wars one for a couple of years now. But I was thinking, like, what's going to be competing with Avatar? And I guess it would be Black Panther, Wakanda Forever.
Yes. Yeah. And it's just one of those, like, with Avatar, right? Like, it's like kind of like a kid's movie, but not like a kid's movie at the same time, because it's been like 12 years, like, between.
That's what's an interesting component as well. Like, a lot of these movies and series aren't really skewed towards kids anymore. Like, Black Panther is more of an adult one, I would feel, because there's a lot more emotional heartstrings, especially with the passing of what was the lead actor? We've forgotten.
Yeah, we're great at this.
He passed away, unfortunately, and there's a big scene at the end, I believe, that pays tribute and homage to him. So it's a kind of emotional one, and even Avatar was quite emotional as well. But from its 2009 release, we were in our early 20s. Now we're in our mid 30s, and it's sort of like, these contents made for the people as they age, if that makes sense? It
does, yeah. So it's almost like made for the parents to bring their kids along, but there's a lot more for the parents in it than there is for the kids. Like, you'd have the colors and the fast-paced storyline and all the action scenes, and I guess like the marketing for like toys and stuff for the kids aspect, but then you've got the dialogue and the emotional aspect to it that's for the the parents watching, so they can stay engaged and actually enjoy.
Plenty of animations and Disney and Pixar things coming out.
Yeah.
None of them do well these days, apparently.
Apparently?
Okay. Apparently. Remember that kid from the Ellen Show? Apparently. Have you ever seen that kid?
No.
I'm never going to bring it up. It's really funny. They have this kid that's getting interviewed at like a Fate Stare or something, and you can tell he's just learned the word apparently.
Oh, yes.
Just says it 18 times in one sentence. Apparently.
Yeah. No, I remember that kid.
Kid's probably like 20 now and
probably
apparently doing well in life. We'll get on to the fusion talk. So physicists achieve, you can bring this up on the screen if you like. Physicists achieve a holy grail of nuclear fusion with a long road ahead. So last week, the Department of Energy's Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory made nuclear fusion history. Scientists fired the world's most energetic lasers to recreate the process that gives stars like the sun their sparkle, turning hydrogen, which is the lightest element on the periodic table, into helium. For the first time in history, this attempt to recreate nature produced surplus energy. So as you said, but you get more out than you put in, essentially. After putting in 2 megajoules of energy, the reactors spit out a bit over 3. So it's like a 50% yield on top. Kind of interesting, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't really make a lot of sense if you don't really know science. Like, we're not the most knowledgeable, but it's a groundbreaking stuff nonetheless. You should pay attention to it because it's going to have huge implementations in the next few decades, 40, 50 years, once they figure out how to do this at mass scale and get it into homes.
Mm-hmm.
The breakthrough is more than 6 decades in the making and brings us a step closer to an abundant form of energy, of clean energy. So gigantic laser here. How big is it? The size of
like a football field?
I think it's 3 football fields.
Yeah, so you can even Google the National
Livermore.
Yes, thank you, Livermore laboratory, and you can actually see how much of a large scale it is. They apparently have like a whole bunch of these facilities all around the place, but this is one of the few that specialize in lasers.
It's a particular type. Yeah, there's other ones that are. I've read a little bit about it. There's different ones that are like oval shaped or donut shaped. They try and do the same kind of experimental outcome, but with a different method, basically.
Mm-hmm.
At the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratories National Ignition Facility, that's a lot of nationals in that sentence. A giant laser takes up a building the size of 3 football fields. The laser shoots a pulse that's split into 192 beams and lands on an eraser-sized golden cylinder. The cylinder contains a frozen pellet of hydrogen isotopes, deuterium and tritium. There's a kind of a little image there of what it would look like. When blasted with this pulse of energy, the capsule heats up to more than 3 million degrees Celsius and implodes. This causes the hydrogen atoms to fuse into helium and release high-energy neutrons along with other forms of energy. So they basically have to get it at super, super hot temperatures, 3 million degrees, and then it'll... Because like when you learn in school, hydrogen and a lot of the atoms have the...
I'm just trying to think of like, the periodic table, right?
They have the protons and the
neutrons?
negative. They have the negative and the positive parts swirling around the outside, and they repel each other, right?
Yeah.
But basically, the high temperatures you get, you force them together as opposed to them naturally repelling from each other.
Right.
And when you heat them up to a certain degree, that's how you can fuse the two together. That's why the sun can do it, because it's
right.
so
So it's
hot.
like you put it under pressure and a reaction sort of happens.
You need a lot of pressure and a lot of heat, which is what this laboratory does, right?
Yeah, and this has been they've been trying to do this for since the 1950s, right? This has been a long time coming.
Yeah, so there has been a joke apparently in the physics world that it's fusion energy has been 10 years away for the last 5 decades. And it's still a long, long way away.
Yeah.
From this article, it says we can't expect large-scale fusion plants to power our homes anytime soon. It requires an enormous amount of energy, around 300 megajoules, to shoot the laser and kick off the fusion process. So to even start the process, they need 300 megajoules, and then they turn 2 into 3. So it's not technically just getting 2 to 3. You have to put in so much to even get the reaction to occur first. So there's so much work and infrastructure and stuff to be built to make this a lot more efficient.
Nah, that makes sense, because I was reading, because this sort of reminded me of because batteries are such a huge part of lithium batteries is such a huge part of all our tech and everything. And then it was, I think they made it as a use in the 80s, but it wasn't made for home or commercial use until the 90s. So it took a good 10 years for them to be able to adapt it for everyday use.
And we're always in the fear stage of climate change and burning all these fossil fuels and stuff. So this could be a way to slow it down and minimize it. But again, we're going to be decades away. This is just a nice little infographic that I found explaining the difference between fission and fusion.
I like these. Makes it easier for me to understand.
It's visual, right? You're a visual learner. So we'll put it up. I'm not going to explain it too much, but the physical processes that produce energy from atoms. So fission, they have splits a larger atom into 2 or more smaller ones. But the problem is you get a lot of uranium and plutonium, which is radioactive waste. So it is productive, but you also get a lot of junk out of it, and it's not clean energy.
So they probably have to figure out what to do with the waste.
Which is it? More energy to dispose it. Whereas fission energy joins 2 or more lighter atoms into a large one using hydrogen, and hydrogen's everywhere, right? It's in water, it's in the air.
It's in our bodies, right?
It's in everywhere.
Yeah.
We're mostly carbon-based, but everything's just got water in it, essentially.
That's why I'm not the science person.
Except for this table. I really need to brush up on my science skills, or learnings, rather. And the byproduct, rather than being radioactive, it's helium, which is used to fuel hot air balloons.
I was going to say that the balloons that make your voice go super high. Yeah.
And just basically not radioactive. But the interesting thing is the amount of energy it produces. So nuclear fission energy is 1 million times greater than any other energy source.
Right.
Whereas the fission is 3 to 4 times greater than fission itself.
Wow.
So it's just super, super clean. But again, it's going to take a long, long time for this to get into homes and stuff like that. I think I've read, you can turn that off. Have you got something that you want to show?
Yeah, I was just going to say, check out the, I'll see if I can send it to you. Just the laboratory, like there's pictures of inside the actual laboratory itself. And it's like massive.
Wow.
Like look at that. Like it is absolutely huge. Like it honestly looks like something from NASA, right? Like obviously, like it's mental, like all these wires, all the tubing and stuff. Wires and tubing, sorry.
It's a lot of wires and there's a lot of wires and tubing in this room alone, let alone the laboratory here. But the interesting thing is, I believe it was publicly funded. It wasn't like a private institute or anything like that.
No, and then because of this, now they've been able to get a lot more money and a lot more resources and stuff towards it, which is awesome, which means then the more money that's invested, obviously, the quicker they'll be able to turn around, whether it can be made for maybe commercial use first and then for household or consumer. Yeah.
I did hear somewhere that because it's from hydrogen, it's like the lightest element on the periodic table. I think if they could figure it out at a large scale where they can incorporate it into every home, you can essentially power the home's energy for a year with a cup of seawater. Wow. So that's, probably 100 years away before that can happen. But it could save the planet. It could mean we don't have to rely on Elon Musk to take us to Mars.
Well, I was going to say like that, like having that amount of energy with just a cup of water, like it just makes me think of like space travel, right? Like could you imagine that not only does it help with like that energy purpose for like a household, could you imagine of like flight as well? Like being able to fly anywhere, go anywhere. Just with
even if you can replace cars, like cars use like combustion as part of the engine process to get it moving, and you got all the gas and all the crap that comes out of the back of it. If once all this stuff can be figured out, decades from now, like we could see a whole new world essentially of different transportation methods, different ways of housing being built. Industries would be just completely revolutionized.
100%, and like that, it's gonna like. Almost like to actually tie into Avatar, right? Because like that was the whole point of the first one with them going to Pandora was to get the resources for...
You're not giving away a spoiler for a 2009 movie, are you?
Oh, I was like, no. Spoiler alert for 2009, everybody. But that was the whole reason. So it took like 6 years to get to Pandora because they had like a special...
unobtainium.
Yes, that's right. Which is apparently used in a lot of sci-fi movies for a particular... I guess metal or resource that they just can't name or whatever it is. But like, yeah, the whole point they go to there is be able to mine that so then they can save planet Earth because they've depleted the natural resources, right?
Interesting.
That hits like so close to home because we're, depleting the fossil fuels, we're depleting all the national resources.
Yep.
And then, that's why they travel outer world and outer space is just to try and find places that can help I guess, bring Earth back to where it was or find more resources and everything.
Yeah, I'm just looking here on Wikipedia. It's actually been used in a couple of movies. So it was first used in The Core in 2003. Also, we never got around to watching Minority Report. Was it Minority Report last week?
Oh, yeah, we never did. Hey.
Anyway, we ended up watching Avatar instead. It was initially in The Core, so I didn't realize it was...
also in James Cameron.
Also in James Cameron. I didn't realize it was used in a couple of movies. I guess he must have been a big fan and just wanted to carry on the legacy of this fake element.
Yeah.
Interesting. So let's move on to TikTok. I did delete it the other week and then I kind of got back on it.
Was that you like re-logging in? Because I got an email saying it's like, quick, someone's logging in.
Well, based on last week, we wanted to bring you guys new ideas and hustles, a way of making money in this upcoming recession and stuff. So I thought, where are we going to find the most obscure and underground random hustles? Probably on TikTok, right?
Yeah, 100%.
So that's why I deleted it initially and then re-downloaded it for that reason. But then I'm kind of like...
Was it a good idea?
After all this news, maybe not so much a good idea. So US lawmakers introduced bills to ban TikTok, citing risk of China spying on Americans. Do you feel spied on?
I not always feel spied on, but because like when you sign up to an app, right, you don't read the terms and conditions and you just go hit OK and go on to the next one. But like usually in those terms and conditions, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, all that kind of one, you're saying, yes, it's okay for you to track my usage. Yes, it's okay for you to track my search results and all that kind of thing. And with the AI episode last week, it was that, yes, you approve of people to access your photo reel.
Yeah.
Like it's... I mean, it's almost like it's a common thing now that you don't even think about saying, yes, it's okay to track.
No one reads that stuff, right?
No. And that's why iPhone sort of introduced that option of like, ask this app not to track. And that's what, really hurt Facebook with their ad revenue and stuff because they couldn't target as much. So yes and no, I'm kind of worried about the whole tracking thing. But this, I guess, with the momentum about TikTok and stuff at the moment, it is a little bit more worrisome.
Yeah, and speaking of terms and conditions, there was a documentary I watched a few years ago. If you want to look into this sort of stuff and see what you're actually signing up for, a lot of the time you're just unaware of it, right? There's a documentary called Terms and Conditions May Apply, and it sort of goes into if you were even like a lawyer, I don't know what kind of lawyer, just a good one, I guess.
A person who knows law.
Even they can't understand a lot of the jargon used in these sort of documents. So again, you don't really know what you're signing up for a lot of the time, and you're taking a blind leap of faith a lot of the time when you're downloading these apps. And billions of people are on these apps, so I guess everyone's sort of in the dark just as much as the person next to you. So it's kind of scary stuff. But on TikTok, legislation seeking to ban TikTok in the US has been officially introduced in Congress in an effort led by GOP Senator Marco Rubio. Rubio's press office cited the quote, risk of TikTok being used to spy on Americans by the Chinese communist regime TikTok, which boasts more than 1 billion users.
That's a lot.
We did an episode a few weeks ago about now there's 8 billion users, or 8 billion
people on Earth.
People on Earth.
So that's a lot.
1 in 8.
Yeah.
Boasts more than 1 billion users of its short-term video entertainment app, has been a political football since its inception because it is owned and controlled by the Chinese internet giant ByteDance. Rubio said, quote, we know it's used to manipulate feeds and influence elections. We know it answers to the People's Republic of China. The act that they're proposing would prohibit all transactions from any social media company located in or influenced by China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, Cuba, or Venezuela. So I guess their main fear is the app is controlled by a different country, potentially an opposing rival country, compared to the ones that we all know and love that are a little bit less skeptical or sus.
Yeah.
Like everyone uses TikTok. Everyone uses Instagram, Facebook, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, maybe
but they're all
they
American.
have been, but they've also been around that a little bit longer as well, right?
And they're American based. So yes, they can be like peering in on your photos and stuff, but they're not sending your info overseas potentially. I mean, we don't know the facts here. TikTok had 111 million average monthly users in the US from January to November 2022, up 22% from the same period last year. So I thought in 2020 during COVID, the usage would have been so high. And then 2021, COVID was sort of lingering out. But this year, it's up 22% on last year. So if everyone was using it during COVID and stuff, like the amount of people using it now must be insane.
Yeah, 100%. Like people would just like, obviously you have people that are late to the bandwagon and be like, oh, I'm not going to get TikTok. And then they eventually do. But there's a lot of people out there that actually make an income from TikTok as well. Or there's a lot of companies that use it for advertising. There's a lot of places like especially podcasts that use it for shorts and stuff. And you had
that's what we were going to do.
Yeah, exactly. And then there was is it Neil Patrick?
Neil Patrick is from How I Met Your Mother.
Who's the podcaster?
Patrick Bet-David.
Yeah, thank you, Patrick Bet-David. I couldn't remember the name for the life of me, but he did an experiment on TikTok as well.
Yeah,
like he released a whole bunch of shorts and stuff. Some were like,
well, it wasn't even intentional. It just was a matter of circumstance.
Yeah, like he was just releasing normal content, and then just one video just happened to be criticizing China, and then just he noticed, or his team noticed, there's just like a dramatic decline on the amount of views and stuff that we're getting. So,
so their assumption is that the content was getting censored and filtered to fewer and fewer people because they had a potential negative light shown on the Chinese Communist Party. But prior to that, they were getting massive views about business and culture, entertainment, I guess. And then, once you make that one video, I guess it's triggered some sort of algorithm and it's just limited his capacity for reach. But that's one example. But I mean, we're going to go into in a second some other interesting news about TikTok and the kind of information that it pushes to certain users can be quite scary. We'll just finish up this one here. Representative Gallagher, who has called TikTok a digital fentanyl.
Yes, that's a buzzword as well at the moment, especially in America, is fentanyl. Yeah. Like it's a huge thing. Like it's a big concern over there. So if they're putting digital fentanyl,
I think they're just using it as a It's
like
kind
a shock value
it's
in a
shock
way.
value and sort of
Yeah.
marketing because everyone is scared of. That's what a big scare thing at the moment, right?
Mhm.
Everyone's scared of fentanyl in the schools and stuff.
Yeah, so if they make TikTok like fentanyl, then the parents or whatever be out there like far out. TikTok's real bad.
They can understand it a little bit easier.
Yeah.
As quote, digital fentanyl that's addicting Americans alleged that the app not only collects troves of data on US citizens, but also censors news. And their example is that by allowing the app to continue to operate in the US would be like allowing the USSR to buy up the New York Times, Washington Post, and other major broadcast news or networks during the Cold War. So they're essentially saying you're letting a foreign entity be one of the biggest sources of news within our country.
Yeah.
So why, like, you wouldn't let USSR filter the media in America during times of war. So it's pretty scary.
Well, and if you think about it, like I think a while back we're talking about, so people Google stuff, obviously, like it's the biggest search platform. Then YouTube is the second biggest search platform, right? Where people search how to or news, all that kind of thing. Yes, people use Twitter for news, but there's going to be people that are going to start using TikTok to search like information, right? So if your information is coming not from, I guess, your country, how do you know how real or false or whatever that information is going to be?
Well, I think a lot of the information is coming from the country, but it's about how it is filtered out and who it's sent to.
Yeah.
So that's the problem with TikTok. It's so curated to your interests. It's not based on a social circle. It's based on interests.
Mhm.
So if you like this Avatar or Star Trek, it's going to filter all that kind of stuff to you.
Yeah, true.
It's not like you're watching Chinese influencers or content creators making content bagging the US, right? What they do is if you have 100 people making content and then 50% are showing America in a positive light and 50% are showing in a negative light, I'm not even showing in America in a negative light, just talking about negative concepts, like we're about to touch on, self-harm or COVID misinformation, all that sort of stuff. They start filtering it. So instead of being a 50-50 split of content coming in, they push one agenda more, and the agenda more is to push the people that are going to start criticizing US more, and it's essentially creating infighting within America. That's
Yeah.
their big concern. I don't know if this is true. It kind of makes sense.
But like if that's what Facebook did, right? They did it during the election. They did it during COVID. Was
Like the
they
sway,
boost?
basically,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. They either boost or dampen the type of posts or the type of keywords that are being promoted. So if Facebook, which is an American-owned company, are doing it, could you imagine what a company that's owned overseas is going to do?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's what creates all this infighting and
Divide. Really.
and divide is a good word, and all the anxiety you see in America between different genders and races and all this sort of crazy stuff that you see going on. All you have to do is be pushed 5% more in one direction, and then it's going to start feeding and feeding and feeding more. But the interesting thing is we don't know for sure, but what the Chinese users would be getting on their version of the app, because they don't have TikTok, they have like their own version. And apparently they get shown a lot more mathematics, educational stuff, promoting
like
Chinese
healthier
government.
content in a way.
More healthier, more positive content. But they don't have Facebook or Instagram there, but we have their app here. So it's like the Trojan horse, right?
Ooh.
I mean, that's not I'm not that smart to come up with that analogy, but like that's basically what it is.
Yeah.
You're sending an app in that has a huge benefit. Everyone loves it. I think it's a huge gift to society. But essentially, you have all these little. What do they have in the Trojan horse? The soldiers.
Yeah.
And they come out and start
Destroying everything
from the inside out. So that I don't know if it's going to be banned. I think it is going to be banned because you already see all these other apps incorporating it. Like you said, Google, YouTube. YouTube is the second biggest search engine. It makes more sense if you're going to create short form vertical content to put it on YouTube anyway. TikTok does have that virality to it, but only if it serves TikTok's interest, which in this example, people believe is to promote the downside of the. Man, I'm just losing it.
Just like the negative.
The negative aspects of the US or Western society, even, right?
Well, that ties into the next article, right? The one that we were reading this morning, just about the one up here, which is, promoting I'll read it down the bottom. So the TikTok's recommendation algorithm pushes self-harm and eating disorder content to teenagers within minutes of them expressing interest in topics and research. Like, I know this was a huge thing for Instagram, right? Not long ago. For a lot of those, if you were interested in like not interested in body dysmorphia.
That was a while ago, actually, because it was, what was the hashtag? Fit something.
Yeah.
It was probably like 5 or 6 years ago almost.
Yeah, and it was like the whole fitness thing, but then it started getting shown to like young teenage girls, and they're getting a lot more body dysmorphia, that kind of aspect. So Instagram really had to change it up and make sure they're promoting positive content to young girls.
And the thing is, that was only still images. There wasn't even videos really made by content creators then. So it was easy to swipe past that stuff, but videos are more engaging.
Yeah, it's a lot more personable as well. Like, you're actually, I guess, seeing someone talking, like seeing their thoughts and feelings and everything from it. So it makes it seem like it's more attainable in a way.
Yeah, so TikTok's recommendation, as you said, pushing self-harm disorders to teenagers within minutes. There's a non-profit organization called the Center for Countering Digital Hate found that the video sharing site TikTok will promote content including dangerous, restrictive diets, pro-self-harm content, and content romanticizing suicide to users who show a preference for that material, even if they are registered as under 18s. Mm-hmm. So as soon as you show one slight bit of interest in, I guess, body dysmorphia or self-harm thoughts, it's going to start feeding you more and more. And like, again, it's the Trojan horse analogy. Mm-hmm. So it's the last thing you need is more and more of that content. Like, you'd think it'd start pushing you towards mental health services, content
think so.
To like counteract those sort of thoughts.
Yeah, so like certain hashtags, if that should like trigger like a different type of algorithm, right? Like a safety algorithm, or like you said, like a mental health one where it's been like, oh, you're seeing these ones, here's some more positive stuff.
Yep. Imran Ahmed, the chief executive of the nonprofit, says the results are every parent's nightmare. Young people's feeds are bombarded with harmful, harrowing content that will have a significant cumulative impact on their understanding of the world around them and their physical and mental health. And one of the big problems is people aren't really that equipped or open to talk about this stuff in person anyway. So if you have a young teenage child, chances are you're not going to be well equipped to like have these sort of conversations. So where are they going to go? Online or to their friends? And then they're going to just get fed more and more of this info unless they have some sort of reasonable outlet to discuss these sort of things.
Yeah. And like, just say if you're someone who's maybe an outcast or gets bullied or doesn't have like a lot of friends or things like that, and you go online and you see these people promoting this stuff and they're getting a lot of love, they're getting a lot of likes, a lot of comments. Right. They see that and be like, I want that. I want to feel
positive feedback loop for a negative outcome.
Yeah, 100%. And they're like, I want to be included. I want to be part of something. Like, I want to be seen, right? Yeah, and so they try to imitate that, or they think like, okay, that's my way out. That's how I'm going to get friends if I, eat less, or if I do this.
It's so scary.
Yeah.
The researchers found that videos relating to body image, mental health, and eating disorders were shown to vulnerable accounts 3 more times compared to standard accounts. The vulnerable accounts received 12 times as many recommendations for self-harm and suicide-related videos as the standard accounts. So I guess they made dummy accounts. The basic standard account, just any sort of person that's not super interested in it or searching for it frequently, were shown things 3 times as much, and then the vulnerable accounts were 12 times as much compared to the average user.
Yeah.
12 times.
That's a lot. That is a lot. Like, that's pretty bad. And considering it's been shown to preteens, and those are the most like impressionable people, right? They're the ones that are growing, trying to figure themselves, have a whole bunch of like hormones firing up. Like, you see that type of content, it's really going to shape how you think going forward, how you're going to evolve into an adult. It can have really, really long-term effects. Like, if you have that like negative connotations when you're younger, who knows what it's going to be like when you're an adult trying to, sort yourself out.
Yeah. You just have bad images and bad thoughts just layered upon layer. Like, it's tricky. And I wonder what the result would be if they ran these sort of experiments on the rival apps that have the same kind of algorithm. Mm-hmm. Like, Instagram's really big right now with the Reels.
Yeah. Yeah, YouTube Shorts. And
if there'd be like a counteract or a counterbalance to those sort of videos and they show more positive stuff, who knows?
Or is there going to be like a push for having like a fail-safe in certain algorithms? Like, just say if that self-harm hashtag comes up, promote other stuff instead.
Yeah, even just like a link to some sort of outlet or phone number or website where you can get a bit of support.
Yeah, like it will dampen it rather than make it 12 times more influential.
It's crazy. So let's go with TikTok. What's our big opinion here? Are we going to, I think I'm just going to delete it now. Because A, I didn't find any hustle video that I wanted. And then B, all this stuff it's not a concern to me. The terms and conditions of the app, which we've heard before in a few other podcasts, they can monitor a lot of your keystrokes, I believe, and different apps that are already on your phone and your location data and that sort of thing. I don't think it's worth it. For the virality of some videos, yes. But like we said, Instagram's been around for like way longer. It's way more of a stable platform. And then YouTube is something we're trying to grow anyway. Is the ability to get a viral clip on TikTok worth the potential heartache going into the future?
Well, it just depends whether it's the consumer or producer mindset, right? Like when I was I actually haven't been on TikTok much in the last couple of months. Like I used to use it as just like a time waster in a way, and I used to just like watch a whole bunch of content, and like I find that I rarely use it now, like whether it's because, you know, all this information about TikTok has popped up, or whether it's more like I just realize you get stuck in that infinity loop so easy on TikTok.
Everyone says that.
Yeah, like you've never used it that much. Like I got into like I got into a bad habit of just like, oh, I got a spare 5 minutes, I'm just going to go on TikTok and have a look. So I've switched
Is it that bad?
Yeah, I had to like switch that mental thing. Like as soon as I opened up the app, I'm like, what am I doing? Close it back down again, because it's just there's quick videos. You'll find like a couple of funny ones to watch, like a couple of dancing videos or whatever. But it's so easy to get into that infinity loop because the videos most of them are so short that you're just going on to the next one. And before you know it, you look at the time and be like, fuck, like 15 minutes has just passed by.
I hear everybody say that. I don't know if it's just I just don't have the ability to get hooked in that much. If it's comedy or so, like I feel like I get burnt out. If it's not something I've chosen and it's being forced on me, I get burnt out from it quite quick. And I don't think I've spent any more than 5 minutes in one session scrolling through the app.
Yeah, like you've almost got like not a short attention span, but you do at the same time. Like you get over things really, really quickly.
Yeah, it's too short.
Yeah, so
that's maybe just why I need is still image, right?
Yeah, maybe, but yeah, you get over things really quickly, right? And like you just want to move on to the next thing. So
I'm not over you, baby.
Oh, thank you.
I see you.
Yeah, see. Oh, thank you. But yeah, for you hate wasting time, right? And that was something that I really like. I've got bad time management skills, and that's something that I'm really trying to learn to get better at. Whereas you're like, no time, and you just quickly move on to the next thing. So I think that's why you've never really been heaps into TikTok. You've never really been heaps into just like watching short form content. You're more of a long form content kind of guy.
That's true. And the stuff that I guess got fed to me was I didn't find that much value in it. And a lot of the stuff is already reposted onto Instagram by the people I follow anyway.
Yeah, like the best ones and stuff. So yeah, it's like for that, it's super easy to get into that infinity loop. So, and I find that rather than, you know, opening up TikTok, I'll open up Twitter instead, or I'll actually look at news or something. Like I'll just try and find something that's a little bit more valuable for me, because
and you have to find it is the most important thing. It's not just fed to you.
Yeah, 100%. And TikTok, some people say TikTok makes you dumb. It's just because you're just letting it take over your time and not having that choice of like what you're consuming is, and making that choice whether it's valuable or not. So
I think people just need more accountability for their shit, you know. Like we did an episode about mental health the other week, and no, I'm not going to say a lot, but like there is a degree of how much you can control your own thoughts and have accountability for like how you're spending your time and where you put your headspace. So I just feel like, you know, if you're getting stuck down that rabbit hole, yes, the algorithm's great, apparently.
And it can be addictive, but it all comes down to deliberate practice. Like you have to make that conscious choice.
You're only going to go on there if you've got nothing else to do anyway.
100%. Yeah.
Troubling times. Speaking of depressive thoughts and mental health, we just seen the new Avatar yesterday. It was great. Do you have the post-Avatar depression syndrome?
No. Is that a thing?
Do you know what that is?
No.
Okay, let's bring that up real quick before we transition into the next segment.
Yeah.
Post-Avatar.
It's we're not going to give any spoilers away, we promise, for the new Avatar.
We'll try not to.
We'll try not to. If we do, apologies in advance. But it's a very long film, so buckle up.
Yeah, we're not going to spend too much time on it because there's too much to take in. But I guess we'll give our initial thoughts and the takeaways, and whether our verdict, I guess. We'll give a little star rating.
Pads. Why do they call it pads, man?
Pads for short. So this was discussed 10 years ago by a bunch of I don't know if they're legit scientists or not, but it is a thing that people believe in, is the post-Avatar depression syndrome. Why do fans feel blue after watching James Cameron films? So I haven't really read this article in depth or made any highlights, but basically the idea is that it is so extravagant, it's so colorful and vibrant, there's so much connection with nature into one another that once people get out of it, they come back to the real world full of technology and
the concrete
car
jungle of life.
and all that sort of stuff, and they just feel depressed basically because the real world is so different from this make-believe. I mean, it is a make-believe movie, scientific or sci-fi movie. People just feel depressed after it because it's the world's so vastly different.
I could sort of see that, like with the first Avatar, right? That was a bit of a, like you were saying, it's like a hero's journey. It's like a love story. It's like a big battle. Whereas this new one's more about family, protecting your family, having that dynamic. It's a little bit more different on, I guess, the outlook or the perception of what's important in life. So if you're, I don't know, like a lonely dude going to see Avatar, and you see this big thing about, this big thing about like family and
I see that.
Having a unit or having like a tribe, right? Like, because the whole thing is like whether, on Pandora they have tribes and they like look after their own tribe, and you come back out and you're like this single or two-person unit or whatever, and you're just like, all right, I guess I'm going to work, doing my thing, trying to make some money, and then, you know.
And everyone's overweight. Everyone's fed the fast food diet. Everyone just wants the quick access to everything. And it's just such a vast different. I mean, that's why we love movies, though, right? Is escapism,
escape from reality.
So the avatars. So you don't have pads. Or you mean you have?
I have pads because I'm a woman. But I
not
don't.
The post-Avatar depression syndrome. No. So James Cameron's Avatar sequel, Way of Water, expected to make a splash with 525 million, so a little over $500 million on the global opening week, but needs $2 billion to break even. So the anticipated blockbuster currently has an opening weekend global outlook of a whopping 525 million. They have to earn somewhere north of $2 billion to break even on its $350 to $400 million budget, and millions more spent on advertising and distribution.
Millions more on advertising. Wow.
In contrast, the first Avatar film, which premiered in 2009, went on to make $2.9 billion.
Oof.
Crazy.
Yeah. And it's probably going to follow this in the article, but yeah, like Avatar was like the top rated movie for like such a long time before Endgame came out and sort of took over. Like
and
it was.
I would imagine this will probably take over Endgame.
Potentially.
I think it will.
Yeah. Give it time.
Okay, give it a little bit.
It depends because it's only just come out. So it depends on people's reactions, the reviews. I think it's going to probably gain that slow momentum because yes, it's a long movie, but it's actually like the world building was really good. The special effects were like phenomenal. The 3D aspect was so much better than the original one because we saw it at the cinemas that first time and you were like, oh my God, 3D is such a new thing.
Well, to make the money up and to beat Endgame, they're going to need, like you said, they're going to be very, very close. So the thing is, the film is expected to earn around $175 million in the US and Canada, while overseas screenings may bring in an additional $350. From that $350, $100 million are expected to come from China, although they've got like crazy COVID right now, so that could potentially hinder its growth.
Right,
and another aspect that you just said is it's going to be around in cinemas for a long time. So a lot of the other movies like Avengers and stuff, they don't stick in. They're in the cinemas, but not for like months and months and months. So like they're comparing it here to Spider-Man No Way Home, which wasn't in the cinemas for a super long time. But it's kind of, here it says here, the somewhat older fan base of Avatar is expected to behave more like viewers of the film Top Gun, which stayed in theaters for many months and has earned nearly $1.5 billion. So the longer it is in the cinemas, the more money it's going to make.
No, that makes sense because if they're sort of like advertising it to like the old, like our generation, right, who watched it when we were in our young 20s.
We've got more money to spend. Oh, we don't really have money to spend now.
But to say it's out for longer, you'd be like, what should we do this weekend? Oh, Avatar's still out. Let's go watch that.
Exactly. But I think we see it in 3D. We've got a little trailer here. We won't play the sound or anything. But the best way to experience it is in IMAX. But there's no IMAX in Sydney. There's only one in Melbourne, in Australia.
Wasn't there one in Darling Harbour?
It's been under reconstruction for like 5, 6, 7 years.
Yeah. I honestly thought 3D was dead. Like, I didn't think they would make any more 3D movies because they don't make 3D TVs anymore. They don't even really make 3D movies on Blu-ray. It's all like the older stuff. But getting it, putting on the glasses, even though I wear glasses, so it was fine. It was actually not too bad. Like, it was quite immersive.
Yeah, it was. I mean, we've watched a few videos and reviews since we'll just pop some random images to have in the background. Since we seen it yesterday, and I mean, I watched the first one the day before on Tuesday, and it was good. But then, when you actually think about how the new one is filmed, the visual graphics, like the underwater scenes, like the actual avatars or the Na'vi themselves are so clear and realistic. It is insane compared to the first one. It's like twice as clear.
Yeah, because the whole, like, for Avatar 1, like, James Cameron wanted to release it or make it like in the 90s, but the technology wasn't even available yet. So it got pushed back until they had the proper cameras and all that kind of thing for it. And it was like revolutionary, right? Like, that's why it was so huge, because it was one of the first 3D movies. It was like one of the first sort of like, with that motion capture, right? They had all the dots and stuff on their face to capture the emotion and the movements and everything. And then this one was just
next level.
Yeah, it looked so realistic. Like, it was pretty crazy.
So yeah, we haven't given away any spoilers yet. I guess like the main theme that you said was the first one was kind of, I thought, was based on like acceptance. Like obviously the military and the sky people are coming in to get the unobtainium and just deplete the Pandora planet from resources. Now that the main character, Jake Sully, is like incorporated into the Na'vi, he's sort of like almost like the king, I guess.
Like the tribal leader of his tribe.
Tribal leader of his clan. But it's based around their family now. So there's like a bunch more kids, way more characters compared to the first one. So this one's more about family dynamics, father and son. There's a few elements of father and son. And it was just, like you said, just more of a unit building and like teamwork and family ties. And there's just so much to go into in the movie, like 3 hours and 10 minutes.
Yeah.
It was long, but it wasn't overly long or overly drawn out.
Like, I thought it was a bit, like, after the movie, because I had to like go to the bathroom like halfway through, like, I thought it was a bit too long, but actually after the next day and sort of thinking about it, be like, you know what, it wasn't too bad, because I realized there was just so many different little stories going on that they sort of needed that space to let them breathe a little bit, else it'd just feel too rushed. I wouldn't be able to remember hardly anything that happened in the movie if it moved too fast, or they didn't, stay on one particular character for long enough. So now when the next one comes out, I'm going to have a better understanding of like where that character's going to go, if they're going to have their own side story.
Surely they can't make it the next one longer, because I know they're thinking up to 4 or 5 of them. We could be decades away before this whole saga is like wrapped up, right? But the interesting thing about this is like the graphics are insane. The facial, I guess, recognition they use with the computer software is crazy. All the underwater scenes are amazing. A lot of it is shot in 48 frames per second. So all the underwater scenes, I don't know if you noticed, they're all in a higher frame rate.
No.
So it makes it a lot smoother than a lot of the action scenes are in 48 frames per second. It actually cuts between 24 and 48 frames per second in the middle of scenes and transitions. So it's sort of, if you know what you're looking for, you can see it. A lot of the fast-paced scenes look like a video game cutscene.
Right, yeah.
That's, if you play video games, you'll probably be able to spot it quite easily. It can be distracting at times. But what's this dude? The I forget what his main is.
The colonel?
The colonel, the sergeant guy is like probably one of the main characters. Jake Sully is probably... He's not really the biggest character in this one.
No, because he's got like his whole family unit, right? They focus a lot on the kids and what they're doing, like their coming of age story in a way, because like he's the clan leader. He like helped, defeat the Sky People. So he has this whole like legendary aspect around it. So it's almost like his children are trying to live up to his expectation, or he's like he's renowned in a way. So that's
he has that military background, right? And he's trying to like run his whole family as like a military unit, essentially.
Yeah, which is a bit different than I think they were saying like the Titanic sort of love story that the first one had.
Well, speaking of Titanic, there's a lot of like almost eerie similar aspects. Like obviously Titanic's filmed on the water because it's a Titanic ship.
It's about a boat.
But like the whole last hour was just action packed, a lot of
On the water. Yeah.
right? And just like fire on the water, burning rubber on the water. Like it feels like Titanic to a degree.
James Cameron has like an affinity for water, right? Because he's also got the movie Abyss, is it? And that's like based in water and stuff as well.
He did that super deep sea dive. Like he has that.
Oh, he has like that big 3D movie that was in the IMAX, right?
It's like real footage from him going down there, I think. Yeah. So interesting. We're not going to give away too much spoilers. Who was your favorite character from this one? You don't have to give away their story or anything like that, but
no, like I liked the her, what's her name? The Kiri, yeah.
Played by Sigourney Weaver.
Yes, yeah. So that wasn't, I didn't think it was to begin with, but it was. So she like played like a teenager and stuff, which was interesting.
Yep.
Like it was one of those things. But her character going forward is going to be, I'm looking forward to like what they're going to do with her, because there was a couple of interesting things that sort of happened that sort of, I guess, solidifies what her story arc could potentially be.
Yep. So let's actually see how many more avatars there are. Avatar number of films.
Let's see how many.
4 films.
Right, so they want to do 4.
That'd be a great video game, this latest one, right? So Avatar, let's have a look here.
Oh, like, because there wouldn't be that many. I mean, unless they make a Little Mermaid video game, there wouldn't be really many games.
Who the hell would play that?
No, there would be a Little Mermaid video game, but there wouldn't be many games like underwater, right?
Right.
Yeah. So it'd just be like different types of like evil bosses to defeat, or yeah, it'd be interesting.
But yeah, there's plenty of new creatures. Like in the first one, there's a lot of the sky, I guess, pterodactyl looking type things. This one's a lot of underwater stuff. What else what have we missed about Avatar?
Well, it's just like if they've got, because where they came from, they were like the forest clan, right? And these guys are like the water clan.
Yep.
Like, is there going to be like a desert clan? Like, what else is
Desert
there?
Clan.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And
It's a bit hard to. It's like when you see like an albino owl in the woods. Like it's easy to spot. It's gonna be easy to spot a blue avatar or a blue Na'vi in the middle of a desert.
Yeah.
Unless the sand's blue.
And yeah, probably.
Probably is.
And then they'd have like, Dune sort of style, like big worms or something like that. Yeah.
If he does that, it's a clear rip-off. There's a lot of stolen elements from other movies.
Well, that's what he said. He said he's so inspired by all these sci-fi movies, all these different aspects, and just wants to like incorporate it into one. Like you could tell like he loves stories, and that was one of the things. Like he said, he had to write a novel before he could release Avatar. Like he wanted to get the story out right. So,
All right, so there's got a breakdown of all the characters that will be in each movie, and I imagine he would have filmed a lot of them back to back. I mean, it would have cost a lot of money to. I mean, this took 13 years to make. The kids, how long would have the kids been in production and filming for? Because a lot
they
of
wouldn't have done it for 13 years
That's what
straight.
I'm saying. It's interesting, like what period of time was like digital effects? What period of time was just getting the actors in their suits and that sort of thing?
Well, it would say, I guess, when production started to when post-production started, right?
That's going to be tricky to pin down. But Avatar 3 expected for release in 2024, so we've got 2 years. Avatar
Production?
4, 2026.
Sorry, just to cut away. So production began in August 2017 and it wrapped up in 2020. So it took 3 years.
That makes sense. Otherwise, the kids are going to age too much, right?
Yeah.
And that'll be interesting to see how far back or how much older the kids get in the progressive movies. The third movie, 2024, then 2026, and 2028. So we're essentially 20 years between number 1 and number 5.
Wow.
And you can see potential for many, many spin-offs. This would just be a great Netflix show. Just a great series.
Yeah.
But the production quality is just insanely high.
It would be, yeah. It would be like unless they have like, the Game of Thrones sort of style money thrown at it.
Or like what was the new Lord of the Rings TV show one of the biggest budget?
Yes, it was.
And it tanked, right?
It did tank, yeah. So you're probably rather having like a movie where you have a little bit more control. There'll be less bleeding, right? Because I guess the more it goes on, the longer it can bleed out, right?
Yeah, but speaking of bleeding out, Warner Brothers.
Oh, yeah.
Bleeding from all the seams.
Bleeding money.
And I've pulled the wrong article up and we don't have access to the Wall Street Journal anymore.
Oh, wow.
Because we've overdone our clicks for the week. But basically, I mean, we've got a few minutes left. We'll wrap it up. Warner Brothers Discovery Warner Brothers has joined Discovery, which owns a bunch of other subsidiaries that make content. So this is a little infographic here. Warner Brothers Discovery now own HBO, CNN, Discovery Plus,
wow.
TNT, Warner Brothers, DC in particular is what we're going to talk about here. And they've just announced that they will be reducing costs or cutting costs by 5.3 billion, or they're writing off stuff worth 5.3 billion, particularly in the content space. So they're just cutting a bunch of TV shows and movies to save money. And like the part we wanted to talk about was DC, because I feel like I'm more of a DC guy than a Marvel guy. I'm more of a Batman, Superman than a Iron Man, Spider-Man guy.
I mean, like with all, you think about like something DC does really well is the Batman movies, right? You've got the Dark Knight franchise. You've obviously got the old school Val Kilmer sort of Batman and all that kind of thing. And then you've got the Robert Pattinson one that does really well. You've got like the Joker film that did really well.
Yep.
They do so well with, I keep saying well, but with...
Only when they're standalones.
Yeah, with the standalones, but also the ones that have a little bit more of like a real life aspect to it, like the nitty gritty. But when it comes to the magical supernatural element, they really fall short.
That's where Marvel shines.
Yes, exactly. But one thing that I was sort of listening to this morning actually was something that Marvel has that's good for them is their Marvel Studios is a standalone studios, right? So they have a bit more autonomy. They have a little bit more control over what they can release, whereas DC's owned by Warner Brothers. Like they don't have their own studio. So I think with this merger, that's something that they're really going to try and push forward, is having their own sort of studio space so they can really have that character building, story building, that universe building that Marvel do.
Yeah. And it's Disney now, right?
Yeah.
They're trying to compete with Disney.
Well, Marvel still has their own studio though, so they still have control, just Disney is just part of it.
So Walt Disney, in comparison, has, obviously Disney, ESPN, 20th Century Fox, which is, the bangers of generations,
so
Marvel Studios.
See how it's a studio? So they actually have their own studio space. So it's all in-house, right?
Because there was Sony, it was that issue with the Spider-Mans were done by Sony, and there was, I guess, competing for who had access to the latest Spider-Man movie.
The intellectual property of it, yes.
Yeah, so it can get very tricky to wrap your head around all this stuff. But I guess the main thing is, now that this big acquisition has happened, everyone wants better DC content. They've seen Marvel's shine for 2 decades now, from the Spider-Mans to the Iron Mans to the Avengers. Like we said, Endgame was like a banger series.
Yeah.
But DC just hasn't hit the mark. They do good on their standalone thing, and then none of their TV shows or series like mesh together as a universe. And that's something they're trying to push forward going into the future.
Yeah.
And
like Flash wasn't too bad, like TV show. Arrow wasn't too bad,
but
TV show.
They're not intertwined.
No, and it was like that joke of like, how could they make like a Suicide Squad before like the Justice League movie? They're all over the place when it comes to that type of thing. Like, I remember reading like Justice League, it was like that was the superhero group that everybody knew, like cartoon wise. Like that's actually something that DC did really well, was like the animation series, like
in the 90s.
Yeah, 100%. The DC animation was really good and really, really strong. But it's just so bizarre that they just can't get like the Justice League right, where everybody knows Superman, everybody knows Batman. Like it's insane that the Avengers with Hawkeye and like Black Widow and stuff seems to do so much better. And
they're lesser known characters. Exactly. It was just, I guess, a better vision overall.
100%. Yeah. And I can't remember the dude's name, but the guy that's in charge of like the Marvel Studios, he's also, they were saying he's also like a business dude. So he was able to build that and create that world. Whereas in DC, because it's not a proper studio, it's just the intellectual property. They have so many people in there, so many vision heads.
Too many cooks in the kitchen.
100%. So they just
too many creative ideas.
Yeah.
None of them really mesh. I guess that's an impossible thing to pull off. And that's why Marvel's been so dramatically more successful at it.
Yeah.
It's trying to wrangle 10 horses at once.
100%. So I think what they're going to try and do, again, for like the 100 billionth time, is start everything from scratch.
Starting again. So basically, latest news is that James Gunn, who did the Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy, I think there's a new one out at the moment or about to come out.
Yeah.
Peter, this is a quote from James Gunn on Twitter. Peter and I chose to helm DC Studios knowing we were coming into a fractious environment, both in the stories being told and in the audience itself, and there would be an unavoidable transitional period as we moved into telling a cohesive story across film, TV, animation, and gaming. So they're trying again.
Yeah.
They're cutting costs at a bigger level from Warner Brothers, but they're going to, I guess, try for the next decade to
literally start from scratch.
Get it all running. But in the end, the drawbacks of that transitional period were dwarfed by the creative possibilities and the opportunity to build upon what has worked in DC so far and help rectify what has not. The transition period is no small thing. Warner Brothers has 4 DC properties on its film slate for 2023. We've got Shazam. I guess that's the sequel. I haven't even seen the first one.
The Shazam's the one with
We haven't seen it though, right?
No,
Was it the first one?
That's like not Zack Schneider, bloody he was in the TV show Chuck and stuff.
But is that the second movie or the first Shazam movie?
I think the second Shazam, unless if that's the Rock Shazam.
So there was the first one in 2019.
Zachary Levy. That's right.
So it's a sequel though.
Yes.
But I mean, the first one was never.
I liked the first one. I thought it was pretty good.
Did we watch it?
I've seen it.
Okay. I must have been away that night. The Flash coming out in June. I believe that's following on from the same actor and stuff from the TV show. Blue Beetle in August, never heard of it. And Aquaman, Lost Kingdom in December.
Yeah.
A well-placed source says Gunn and Safran are exploring the possibility of incorporating filmmaker Matt Reeves' iteration of Batman, the new one with Robert Pattinson, into the wider universe. So they're trying to intertwine all these things because they've got a bunch of movies in production, a bunch that are like pretty much ready to come out, and now they have to like refocus how to tie it all into one universe. And
that will be hard.
That's what it's saying. They're trying to thread the impossible needle here. They've cut back. Wonder Woman 3 is not happening anymore. They've just essentially sacked. What's his name?
Henry Cavill.
Henry Cavill is not going to be Superman anymore. They want to do a younger version of Superman.
And he's a great Superman as well. He's
the best.
He looks like Superman. He's got like and he's a great actor as well. Like he's in The Witcher. Yeah. So it'll be interesting how they tie it over. And like it's always that struggle with Batman, right? Because they always do it so dark and so gritty. And then how are they going to enter in like someone who's got magical powers? Like
Christopher Nolan, like there's some things that have to be set apart. But I can understand you're trying to have a standalone arc of stories. Like the Dark Knight was amazing, right? But like you said, it's going to be hard to incorporate someone that's a bit outside the box into that. Although they sort of appear in comic books and stuff together. Yeah, it is hard if you don't want to interrupt the already creative flow of the stories you're trying to tell with one particular Batman.
Especially in like a lot of the Batman ones, his villains are real life people, right? Rather than having someone who has like a slightly magical ability. Whereas in the comics, he does fight people that have like a bit of an ability and stuff there. So it's not too far fetched when it comes to adding in other superheroes.
I think the trouble with them, like Marvel's put it off well, and like you said, they do Hawkeye and all these other spin-offs because their main ones have been so successful. But it's about knowing your place in the franchise, knowing the character's place. Is this a B or C grade character? Does it deserve a TV show? There's just so much content, so many streaming services, such demand for new content all the time. But they got to get the main ones right. Like Batman and Superman need to knock them out of the park every time.
100%.
Everything else will flow.
Yeah, and Flash is probably the second biggest one as well, I think, in getting that one right.
Have you ever watched the TV show?
I watched the first 2 seasons or so, and I used to watch The Arrow as well. Like The Arrow was pretty decent.
Arrow was supposed to be good at the time. I never watched it.
I think it got a bit weird towards the end, as usually those kind of shows do.
But you burn out, right?
Yeah. But it'll be interesting to see what they can do with it. And that's like what it is at the end of the day, right? They want to make it a bit more cohesive against like all the streaming platforms and all these companies. They just want your attention at the end of the day, and they want a strong audience that will come back time after time to spend their money or to give you their attention. So I think that's what you're saying before was one of the struggles with the audience was like trying to make them happy, but also making a successful series and movies that can go across all these different platforms. So can go into the cinemas and can go into the streaming platforms, and people can just transition easy from one to the other.
We'll make it easy for you guys to transition to next week's episode. We'll see you then next Monday. Bye.
Bye.